second unit of the 5 units of competence. It begins, as they always do, with health and safety requirements. Because in this case we're dealing with potentially dangerous equipment, that is equipment you may be working on to repair, it's essential that you follow the isolation procedures which is laid out in the workplace health and safety section. I'm not a great fan of isolation procedures. I've worked, as I said, in industry for some 50 years, and I've probably worked under as many isolation systems, and each one of them has a fatal flaw, and that is they're working with people. People make mistakes. I don't know how many times I've been on a job with a piece of equipment with a failed tag on it still in use. The only surefire, practical, number one, never fail method of isolation in this particular case, it doesn't work in fixed wiring, but in this particular case, is to ensure that you have the entire length of the lead and the plug visible to you at all times on the bench in front of you, and only having one piece of equipment on your bench that you're working on. Every other method has the flaw that somebody can come along and remove your tag. If you can't see the end of your lead with the tag on it, then you cannot be sure nobody's going to remove it. In element 2.2, we deal with replacing the lead on a piece of earthed equipment. I've shot a short video showing you how to identify Class 1 equipment. There are basically two types of electrical equipment. One is earthed with a single layer of insulation called Class 1, which we'll deal with in this subsection of the element. The other is Class 2, where you have two layers of insulation, main layer and a subsequent layer. They say that it must be earthed in accordance with requirements. The requirements they're talking about are under AS 3000, AS 3760 and probably some others, where the maximum resistance of the earth must not exceed 1 ohm. Now 1 ohm isn't very much. It's a very low figure. It isn't mentioned here, but you also must ensure that you don't compromise the insulation resistance. The insulation resistance is the strength of the insulation protecting the earthed frame from the actual wiring, and that cannot be less than 1 million ohms, 1 megohm. So it has to be 1 million times the resistance of the earth. Okay, so we'll go off now and we'll have a look at the video showing the construction of a piece of Class 1 equipment. There are basically only two types of electrical appliance, and they are categorized by their electrical construction. Here's a soldering iron. This is Class 1, and we'll deal with this one now, and we'll have a look at Class 2 later. The difference between the two is, see on this one, our wires have a single insulation and then they go down into a metal tube or a metal frame. And on the other side, it has an earth wire connected to the metal frame. So Class 1 has one layer of insulation between the electrical conductor and the metal frame, and it is protected by an earth wire. Now remember, the earth is the drain of the electrical system. Anything that we don't want, anything that gets to the metal frame that we don't need or don't want, it is returned via the earth
and safely disposed of, and that will either trip the RCD or blow the fuse if the fault is bad enough. When we're repairing a tool, and I'll demonstrate to you later repairing this one because it has a burn mark on the lead and that has to be repaired. When we do it, I'll show you how we go about it, but the main thing when you're repairing any tool is to retain the integrity of both the insulation between the conductors and the metal frame on a Class 1 and the earth wire and the metal frame. And we'll do some more on that when we actually do replace the lead on this one.
Element 2.3 deals with replacing the lead on a piece of Class 2 equipment. As I said, there are two types of electrical equipment, Class 1 and Class 2. Class 1 has one layer of insulation and an earth. Class 2 has two layers of insulation and no earth. They rely on the integrity of two layers of insulation to protect you from the live conductors. And it does it very well. A major proportion of the faults that I've found in electrical equipment are in Class 1. I think I've only ever found about 3 or 4 actual faults in Class 2 equipment. It is very sound and very safe. When you're replacing the lead on a piece of Class 2 equipment, it is vitally important that you do not compromise the integrity of the insulation. That means you don't break anything or leave anything foreign in the unit when you're putting it back together, and you don't connect any wires where they're not supposed to be. I found a good strategy is to take photos or a video of the equipment as you strip it, so you always know where your wires will go back to, and you will always see if you've actually dropped any offcuts of wire into the frame itself. So we'll go off and have a look at a video of a piece of Class 2 equipment and see how it's constructed.
The second class of appliance is Class 2. Class 2 is different to Class 1 in that it doesn't have an earth protection, but it relies on two layers of insulation. There's your one layer there, and then there's your cover. That's the second layer of insulation between any live components, which are the live components there, and any metal parts. Now here's a metal part, but it has two layers of insulation. One layer of insulation, two layers of insulation between that and any exposed metal. When you're repairing it, you must be absolutely certain that you do not damage the integrity of this insulation by either physically damaging it or leaving foreign objects in there, or when you're stripping your cables, make sure there's no loose wires or anything in there that can breach this double insulation. They're very safe actually. I'd say 80 to 90% of the faults that I find are in the earth wire in Class 1. Very, very rarely do you find a problem with Class 2. It's identified in nearly all cases by this double square, a square within the square. If you see that symbol, you can be 100% positive that it is Class 2. Class 1 doesn't have anything like that. There is a symbol for Class 1, but it is very rarely used. But all Class, or I'll say again, nearly all Class 2 appliances have the double square.
Element 2.4 deals with the actual connections to the appliance or to the lead. Now this is dealt with in great detail in several videos on connecting plug tops or plug sockets to leads, connecting the lead to the terminal of an appliance that you're replacing it to. But basically what they're looking for is that you connect the cables correctly to the correct terminal. Now every plug, or generally every plug, has the correct terminals marked on it, and in several of the videos I demonstrate how to see the polarity of a plug, where you put the male plug in your right hand with the earth to the ground and you're looking at the active. You put the socket in your left hand with the earth to the ground and you're looking at the active. And you must ensure that the brown wire goes to the active and the blue wire goes to the neutral. And the earth is critical that the earth goes to the earth pin, and the earth pin is always separate to the other two, so it isn't difficult to identify it. So that's about all there is in element 2. It mainly deals with the actual connections to the equipment, and I have dealt with that in detail in several of the videos that you'll be seeing later.